Hi everyone, my name is Raylan Turner, and today I'm going to be talking about all things related to the Reggio Emilia approach. However, we can't dive deep into that without first talking about this guy here. This is Loris Malaguzzi, a man who once wore many hats, had many talents and jobs between being a teacher, a program director, a journalist, a psychologist, and pretty much everything else in between that he could be for his community. He worked very closely within the Italian town of Reggio Emilia, and just honestly within that area entirely, to help with rebuilding schools entirely after the war. He believed that children are powerful and strong beings. Um, he believed in the importance of socialization and learning through relationships and interactions with others. And he also believed in the implementation of the 100 languages of children, which I will be discussing later on in this presentation as well. So to get started with this, we're going to throw it back to the year 1860, where there was a preschool founded in an Italian town known as Reggio Emilia, that serviced families who were living in poverty at the time. Moving on down to the year 1913, where a preschool in a local village that focused primarily on the moral and physical development of students rather than the cognitive and kind of like other areas of development was formed. And this kind of kept up till around the year 1938, where this was shut down by the fascist regime. Moving on down to the year 1963, where a few years after the war ended, the Italian Women's Union opened and operated 60 different self contained preschools within that area in Italy, with 8 out of those 60 actually being located in Reggio Emilia. Continuing on in the year 1963, the first municipal preschool was founded with Malaguzzi's kind of ideals being implemented, with that being the foundation of the preschool and students' approach to learning and things like that. Jumping to 1971, the first infant toddler center was founded, with the hopes of kind of consolidating and condensing the school program and age ranges a bit, focusing primarily on specific groupings of age ranges together. By the year 1991, the Reggio Emilia approach has made its way into the Newsweek magazine and was coined as being the most advanced in the world for early childhood education. And then by year 1994, Reggio Children, an international center located in Italy that promotes this Reggio Emilia approach, was created and founded. And even between now and then in the year 2026, I feel like this approach has kind of blossomed and has continued to evolve and change and make its way into this kind of what is the standard, like the set standardization of education today. So kind of jumping into the educational philosophy and foundations that tie into this approach. This approach was created with children being kept at the forefront and truly being the foundation for all things related to Reggio Emilia. Um, Loris Malaguzzi believed that children are active and capable beings and should, can, and will play a very large role in the learning process. This is a very inquiry based learning experience, and truly based off the foundations of the children's interest and just kind of their minds and the ways that they think. The 100 languages was also a very important part of this approach. Um, when talking about the 100 languages, he, as in Lourdes Guzzi, was not only referring to the verbal or written language of students, but also in the ways that they think, the ways that they express themselves, they understand, and truly just the way that they are able to make sense of the world around them. He also believed that we as human beings are lifelong learners that are able to learn from one another um, socially, and that kind of ties into the professional development aspect of it. Um, the students are able to learn from one another the same way that we as teachers are, and that like we as teachers are going to continue to learn all that we can so that we can go on and share this knowledge with our students. In terms of the educational documentation and what this looks like in practice, they're like proof of work. There are many times where uh, just like being able to document the learning experience where teachers are able to like take pictures, and in practice this like it creates a lifelong legacy of what the students have worked for and where they have grown and shifted their thinking. The environment and also like in this classroom also plays a very large role in this approach. Adequate working conditions and space are super important to things like stability, belongingness, and every other characteristic um, that plays a role or has an impact on students and us teachers in with these classrooms. So, in looking at some pictures here, this setup kind of reminds me a lot of a Maria Montessori classroom, very student centered and inquiry based, where like it's student sized, children sized furniture. Students are very easily able to access materials. The materials that they are using are natural, and open ended, and multi purposeful. There's lots of natural light and plants and things like that found within these classrooms. Children's work is displayed throughout the classroom on walls and things like that on shelves. Um, an important part or feature of this classroom is an art studio that allows for students to be able to express themselves a little bit more and focuses far more on process over product art. And then there are many spaces throughout the classroom where students are able to collaborate with one another as well. So in terms of approaches with assessment, this is not your typical pencil paper test kind of thing. Instead, students are assessed through direct observation from their teachers, where teachers are documenting their processes of learning and understanding by taking pictures of students engaging in activities and in learning experiences. And then in addition to taking pictures of them going through it, they're taking pictures of what student like the students' work and then collecting students' work as well. In addition to that, um, assessment could also look like a simple conversation with the teacher and the student, where they're given an opportunity to kind of think and understand and talk through their experience. And then this goes on to kind of impact the teachers. This assessment, like way of assessment, goes on to impact the teachers and the work that they put into like the emergent curriculum, where things kind of shift and change based off of student interests and what they're learning at the time. So there are some strengths and weaknesses that I found within this approach. Starting with the some of the strengths being um valuing different forms of expression, and like there's truly no limit in a way that student can be themselves or do their work because they are able to go about it in many different ways. I would say the focus on relationships was also a strength, and something that is a little bit different than what we would see maybe in the public school system today, um, just because of the true belief in collaboration and just togetherness. Not, I feel like today it's a lot more individualized, but like being able to come together to work together and think together is definitely very important and honestly very, very helpful for students. I would say another strength being students' role in the learning process. They have a lot more say in their learning and how they go about things in this approach. And then the intentional teaching as well. Because of standardization of curriculum and all of the things that is in your typical public school system that we see today, teachers are able to be a lot more intentional about what they're teaching and how they teach it and why they teach it compared to the set in stone, like reading a script of this is what we're learning today and this is how we're learning it kind of thing. On the opposite side of the spectrum, we have weaknesses. This approach might be a little more time consuming for teachers because as teachers, like due to the fact that it's so student led and inquiry based, teachers don't necessarily always know that the direction that it's going to take its turn into. So teachers often have to like continue on with being that lifelong learner to continue to learn things in the different directions that they may head, so that they're always prepared to continue to educate. And also not knowing what direction things are going to take, you might not have access to the materials right away, so it requires a lot more time and maybe even money or things like that for students or teachers to gather all of the knowledge and all of the materials that they may need to continue on down that path of learning. I'd say another weakness could be the lack of structure. Because of the fact that it is so student based and led, it's kind of more like free flowing compared to that of like, okay, from like 10 to 10:30 we're doing math, from 11 to 12 we're doing reading and things like that. I kind of think to my back to myself and who I was in my own K to 12 experience. I don't know that I would really do so well in this kind of environment because I'm the kind of person who I feel thrives in like a set schedule kind of thing. So that might be a bit of a weakness or something that's not so great for other learners who may be like me. In addition to that, this is kind of difficult to mix in with the standardized systems that are put in place in the school system today, just because of, like I've said previously, like the different directions that it can take and truly not knowing where one learning experience will go and how it will connect to other things. So, some of the biggest US implications being related to all things Reggio Emilia and this approach, I'd say the biggest one being the standardization and just like the hyper focus that we in America have put on that in terms of the education system. In practice, that would be a very big change because of just how like strict that our schools have become on that. In addition to that, there would be a very large shift in the family involvement as well. Families would have a lot more of a say in their child or their students' learning, um, compared to that comes directly from the curriculum and things like that that we're seeing in the schools. In addition, because of this requiring so many, like much more knowledge and more materials and fun, like it seems like it would require also a little more funding, which would be a bit difficult, equity wise, for those schools that are already underfunded. This would be a very big shift financially and professionally for teachers to continue to go to professional developments to continue to learn these different things. And then another implication or like a big shift would be the teacher's role. That would change dramatically as a teacher wouldn't necessarily be like, I'm the teacher, you're the student. This is how it's going to be. But like in this sense, teachers are more of a guide and are able to kind of be more of an observer of the learning experience rather than having like a set in stone role in it as well. And then here are my references, and that is that. Thank you.